Are you new to car audio systems? Building a system, you want to get more familiar with subwoofer impedance, subwoofer voice coils, or you're just trying to learn more about your existing system? Well, you know what? Let's go ahead, let's break some of this down so you're more familiar and get you going. Fundamentally, impedance is just the resistance of the voice coil on the subwoofer, and the voice coil is the coil itself. It is a magnetic wind. When it receives electronic signal from your amplifier, that's what makes the subwoofer move. And the resistance within that subwoofer will determine how you're going to connect it to your amplifier and how it will play. A lot of subwoofers will have a single coil and dual coil setup. Well, what does that mean to you? Well, a single coil is essentially a single positive and negative input into the subwoofer to get it to play. Whereas a dual coil will have two sets because there's essentially two coils inside the subwoofer. So you'll have two positives and two negatives. And how you wire that will determine how much power will go into it from your amplifier. Most subwoofer coils have an impedance or resistance level that can be measured, in whole numbers, 8 ohm. Ohm is going to be your rating. If you're unfamiliar with ohm, it is the omega symbol, and that will show you what the resistance or the impedance of the subwoofer is. Now, you can actually measure your subwoofer resistance impedance with a multimeter. We have here a Fluke. You can use any kind of digital multimeter that has the ohm symbol. Let's go ahead, let's use this multimeter, and I'm going to show you exactly what it looks like to measure a subwoofer. I have here a single coil subwoofer. Now the rated sub is 4 ohm, but let's go ahead, let's just say I don't know. Let's say you're bringing me this sub, I have no idea what it is. Let's go ahead and measure it. Now to do so, here I have my multimeter. I'm going to set my multimeter down to ohms, omega symbol, and I have here two terminals, one being positive and one being negative. Now when you're testing for resistance, you don't have to put the negative on positive, you can do either one. You just have to make sure that the terminal is on one end and the other terminal is on the other. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to place one terminal on one terminal on the other. So the impedance is about 4 ohm. There can be a little bit of deviation. Sometimes they're a little bit more, sometimes they're a little bit less. As long as they're in and around where they should be, then you should be good to go. So this is a 3.6 ohm. So let's just say I have an amplifier that does 200 watts at 4 ohm. That means that this amplifier will give just a little bit more, about 220, right around 200, 220 at 4 ohm. Okay, well now you want to ask, what if I have two subwoofers? What do we do? Now, this is where it gets a little bit tricky, but I'm going to go ahead and show you how to wire it up and what the ending impedance will be. We have two subwoofers and we're trying to wire it to a single amplifier, which would be a mono amplifier, which is only one channel. You have no idea how to wire these two together. Now there's two ways that these subwoofers can be wired together. The first is going to be what's called parallel, and the second is going to be what's called series. So let's go ahead, let's try parallel first, since it's going to be a little bit more complicated. Now, the formula for parallel is R1 times R2 divided by R1 plus R2. If you're going to be using more than two subwoofers, you want to use this equation. So after calculating, these should be wired down to a 2 ohm load. Okay? Now, in order to wire them to a 2 ohm load, parallel means that both positives will be wired together and both negatives will be wired together. So I'm going to take my speaker wire and I'm going to do that as follows. All right, so now that we have our speakers connected together, Both negatives are on the negative, both positives are on the positive. Let's go ahead and let's meter. So if we did our calculations correct, one sub at 4 ohm and another sub at 4 ohm would give me an end result of 2 ohm. So I'm going to take my positive and negative and I'm going to meter my resistance. And right now I'm reading 1.8, 1.7, 1.9. So that's roughly about 2 ohm load. And now that I have my resistance, I can dictate how much power my amplifier will be at 2 ohm. Or even if you want to be more specific, at 1.8 ohm, 1.9 ohm. Now from that point, in your box, you're going to take the positive and negative from either sub, whichever your terminal's at. And you're going to take your positive and negative and you're going to run it to the terminal cup. And that will be your new positive and negative now that they're together. Now that I've wired my subwoofers in parallel, like the example, and I've used my multimeter to measure the subwoofer impedance, I've determined that the subwoofers are 2 ohm. Now I can look for my amplifier. So in the case of power, because impedance is one thing, power will also determine what you want to look for in your amplifier. In this example, I use two 200 watt subwoofers. And anytime you add subwoofers into your audio system, you always add the power together. So two 200 watt subs, that's 400 watts of power. So I'm looking for an amplifier that does 400 watts at 2 ohm. Now, let's say you can't find, or you are looking for a very specific amplifier and it does more power than 400 watts at 2 ohm. I'll just grab an example and say 500 watts. Can you hook up that amplifier to your subwoofers? The answer is yes, but if you do that, you also want to have to take great precaution in tuning your amplifier, because if you add too much power, you will damage the subwoofers and you can possibly damage the amplifier in the process. Series, on the other hand, is a little bit different. The equation for series is R1 plus R2 plus R3 plus R4, etc., etc. So essentially, when you're running it in series, you are wiring them together. Something very familiar would be like Christmas lights. So in order to do series, your positive from the amplifier is going to come into positive of the subwoofer 1. We'll call this subwoofer 1. And then the negative of subwoofer 1 will go into positive of subwoofer 2. And then the negative of subwoofer 2 will be your new negative on the amplifier. So based on the formula provided from our support library, this is 4 ohm and this is 4 ohm. When you do the calculation, it'll be a total of 8 ohm, or in and around 8 ohm. To wire it up would be as follows. So I'm going to take my negative, and this is just for testing purposes. So, normally with us, we always solder everything and make everything look nice and pretty, but we just want to show you the general idea. All right, so I'm just going to put this up as my negative. So let's just say I'm trying to wire up to an amplifier. My positive from the amplifier is going here, and then the negative is going to this positive, and then this negative is going back up to the box and to the amplifier. So now that we have it all wired up, let's go ahead, let's test for resistance, which it should be in and around 8 ohms. So again, you don't really have to use a specific method to connect it. You just want one on one terminal, one on the other. So in this case, if I read it, it's reading at 7.1, 7.2. So now when I'm connecting it to my amplifier, I have to know how much my amplifier will output at 7 to 8 ohms. Now in this example, we wired our subwoofers in series to 8 ohm load and verified with our multimeter. Now I can look for an amplifier that does right around 400 watts. Like in the previous example, you're adding the power, but then you're using the same impedance that you're measuring for. So in this case, 400 watts at 8 ohm. Now, again, like the previous example, Can I add an amplifier that does more power? Yes. Again, take precaution, tune the amplifier right, you should be good to go. Well, you're probably asking yourself, what if I have a dual coil subwoofers? Well, you want to treat dual coil woofers what you would think of from the previous example of two single coil woofers. A dual coil woofer will have two sets of coil, and whether you want to wire them in series or parallel would be determined on each coil. Like if you're running 4 ohm and 4 ohm and you wire them in parallel, you have a 2 ohm load just on a single subwoofer instead of multiple subwoofers. Now that you're more familiar with how to wire up your sub, go ahead and get out there, connect, bass out. And if you're wanting more information about, different things about the car audio realm, check out the link below. We have a support library on our website. This is Jay with MTX, and we'll see you in the next one.